Jain Sahab, you can introduce.
Yeah.
Gopalan.
Welcome, Gopalan sir. Such a great connectivity with you that it seems that as if you are one of us. By profession, Gopalan sir is chartered accountant. While working in industry, it was our fortune, not his only, that he came in contact with J. Krishnamurti and his tasks in 1980. Gopal sir is now 71 and resides in Bangalore. He and his wife, Shobhaji, joined the Valley School in 1982 as parents and as teachers in 1983. He has written books, Bud to Blossom, Exploring Creativity, One Plus One Infinity, Exploring Intelligence, Operating Thought. Mr. Gopalan, could you please start speaking now?
Thank you, Dubeji. I'm sorry, Sushil Jainji, track habit. Today, I would like to talk about disorder, but it may be at levels that we don't see eye to eye. So I will definitely invite some criticism at the end of this talk so that we can have an active dialogue. In many religions in the world, the tree is used as a symbol of life. And in the Indian tradition, both the Bhagavad Gita and the Katha Upanishad, they talk about the tree of life, the inverted tree of life, with its roots in heaven and the branches emanating into our world. But on any piece of ground, it's not only one tree that grows. Other shrubs and trees also grow from the same ground. And today I would like to talk about a very thorny shrub which grows from the same ground, which I'm calling the shrub of disorder. But to connect it to the botanical world, we could take the example of the bougainvillea. It's a very common ornamental plant these days, and it has very, very appropriate and relevant similarities to our human individuality. Bougainvillea is primarily an ornamental plant. It has no major utility in the world. It's a climber. It cannot stand on its own. It has to climb on something for support. And it's a very insidious spreader. It climbs and then it spreads rapidly and takes over even the plant upon which it climbs. It has thorns that prevent animals from eating its leaves, and it does not offer any edible fruit to anyone. Quite similar to the human being. But the point to note is that both the bougainvillea as well as the traditional tree of life, which is the aswatha, the people tree, both have their roots in the same source, that energy which is beyond the mind. So both originate from the same, but the manifestation is very, very, very different. There is a simile here which is worth comparing to in our technological world. And that's the simile of an electric motor and a generator. An electric motor and a generator are identical pieces of equipment. They are not different. Essentially, it's a coil placed within a magnetic field. If you provide electricity to that coil, it rotates and it becomes a motor. If you rotate the shaft, it generates electricity from through the coils. Then it becomes a generator. So whenever you switch on a motor, the rotation of the shaft generates a current, and that's called the back EMF. And that's one of the biggest problems that engineers face. You never get the entire energy output from a motor because some of it, becomes a back EMF, which goes in the opposite direction to the current that is being supplied. So through technology, through all these 150 years, engineers have tried to address this problem of this back EMF. And they have come up with some solutions. And if you Google search and say, how do you reduce the back EMF of a motor? The answer you will get is by slowing down the motor. Put a load on the motor, slow it down, and the back EMF can be reduced, but it can't be eliminated. And if you look at our human living, we are doing precisely the opposite. We are speeding up our lives, resorting to multitasking, which is similar to taking off the load of the motor and allowing it to generate a higher and higher back EMF. And you see exactly that happening as our disorder from our lives interferes with day-to-day living. Now, there have been technological developments which have also contributed to reducing back EMF. They use electronics, semiconductors, diodes, different ways. But what they've realized is you can only reduce and manage this back EMF. You can't eliminate it. And it seems to me the human ego, which generates disorder, is in a similar state. You can minimize and reduce the effects of the ego, but you can't eliminate it. Because without the ego, there is no mind. Without the mind, there is no world that exists for us. So how do you go about reducing and managing this ego? Just as you reduce and manage a back EMF in the electric motor. Krishnamurti talked a lot about order in most of his talks, and he made statements like virtue is order, intelligence is order, love is order, beauty is order. And Krishnamurti also said to have inside you that light that has no beginning and no ending, that is not lit by your desire, that is not yours or someone else's. When there is this inward light, whatever you do will always be right and true. It is only possible when you die to the past completely. And this can be done only when there is complete order in the brain. Now, we listen to all this and there is absolutely no disagreement. We understand completely what is being said. But our intellect says, analyzes what we have heard, and then it says, what does order mean? And the common dictionary meaning of order is the arrangement of people or things according to a particular sequence or pattern. Now, sequence and pattern is a construct of our thought intellect. And therefore, inevitably, we assume that order is also something that is within the limits of thought intellect and can be created. And this is where Krishnamurti is misconstrued and misunderstood. Because again and again, what he's pointing out is order is not the opposite of disorder. The absence of disorder is order. Now, in a tree, the most visible part of it are the leaves. Then come the branches. After that comes the trunk. Now, we only infer that there is a root. We can't perceive the root. But seeing the tree standing there, logic says there must be something going under the ground supporting it. There must be something bringing water and nutrients from inside the soil. And therefore, we hypothesize and speculate that there is something called a root. When a tree dies, you can do a post-mortem and establish that there is a root. But while the tree is alive, you can only speculate and hypothesize that there is something called a root. So order is something that needs to be investigated in a similar manner. looking at what is available, which is disorder, we have to investigate and hypothesize what is that order that exists from which even the disorder has arisen. But that order is not the opposite of disorder, and it doesn't fall within the construct of the mind. So again, to go back to the example of the tree, the most visible part are the leaves. And the leaf has a primary function. It produces food for the plant, as well as, you may say, every other living creature on this world, because that food becomes a source of food for the insect, the animal, and up the food chain. If there were no trees, none of us would have any food. In a human society, leaves are represented by this entire gamut of activity for earning a livelihood. For a majority of human beings, earning a livelihood is the dominant activity in their lives. A very, very small percentage do not need to work for a livelihood. So they are not representative of the majority. So let's talk of the majority. Majority have to work for a livelihood for a major part of their lives. And this working, the preparation for this working in today's world starts from the age of 2, when the child is sent to a nursery or a preschool. And it goes on till the age of 65 or 70, when the human being can't work anymore. Now, day-to-day living is centered around this activity of livelihood, particularly in the Western industrialized culture and society, which we have now overwhelmingly adopted. For example, our working week and weekend are suited to the factory and the office. Our office hours and working hours are suited to the factory and the office. This was not always so. In the traditional system, before the industry started dominating things here, there was no such thing as a weekly holiday. The holiday would be fortnightly at the time of the new moon and the full moon. Amavasya and Paurnami were always holidays. And even today, in the smaller towns or smaller localities, you will notice this in the Marwadi shops. The Marwadi shops start open by 6:30 in the morning. And they stay open till 9:30, 10 at night, because they would like to get every single customer that they can get. Business is competitive and difficult. So they work very long hours and they work 7 days a week. There's no holiday. But on the Amavasya day, 1 day in a month, every Marwari shop in that locality will be closed. Now, why was this holiday given? It was not a rest and relaxation, the way we look at our weekends. The vision from which this system emanated said that human beings live within the cycle of the moon, the lunar cycle. And the energies of the moon increase and decrease in the waxing and waning phase. And at Amavasya and Paurnami, the new moon and the full moon, when the energy is most intense, that is the time to withdraw from activity and spend more on inward contemplation. So the life was not centered around livelihood, although livelihood dominated most of the living time. There was very consciously a holiday system built in where you spent time withdrawing and gathering your energy when it was at its peak in the environment. Today, in the cities, definitely Marwadi shops adopt the Sunday holiday too, just like anybody else. Now, leaves compete for sunlight. right? Because sunlight is an essential for them to produce food. And you will, if you observe the leaves of any tree, they arrange themselves, they twist and they turn so that sometime in the day they get sunlight. All the leaves do not get the full quantity of sunlight that they need, and therefore their production of food is never optimum. And that's why probably you have so many leaves on a tree. Human beings too are in a similar position. They have to compete for the resources of livelihood. Everyone cannot earn the optimum. Now, branches of a tree support the leaves and they act as pathways to bring nutrients and water to produce the food. In our human society, parents, family, education act as branches, support and pathways to earn a livelihood, to earn the capability to earn a livelihood. But does the role of parents, family, education end with simply providing the support to enter a career? Or does the primary responsibility of all these is to ensure how to obtain a quality of life while one is living? This seems to have been pushed aside today in today's world. So if you look at the modern careerist living, grandparents have been delegated this role of looking after the children because the parents don't have time, right? Parents have little time or leisure to spend with children. And particularly in the urban culture, there is very little time to even have a family meal, except probably on a Saturday or a Sunday. And with the world becoming connected through the net, now the working hours go into the night because you have to adapt to where your customer is. And if your customer is in the West, well, for him it is daytime. When it is nighttime for you have to work. So livelihood seems to have taken over everything else and at a tremendous cost. So will all this increase disorder or will it reduce disorder? Now the branches in turn spring from the trunk of the tree and they provide the entire superstructure for the tree to stand. In human living, isn't society the trunk of the tree which provides that structure? But then comes a very, very basic question. Is that society different from the individual? Or does the individual make the society? Just like every drop of water comes together and makes the ocean, is the drop separate from the ocean? So is the individual separate from society? We act as if it is. There's an age-old story which established the relationship between the individual and society. There's the story of a king who believed that his people were very religious, very generous, very dharmic. And one day the minister told him, well, you have assumed that. Why don't you put your assumption to a test? So the king said, good idea. And he gave an order. Tomorrow morning, everybody is to bring 1 lota of milk and pour it into the common tank in the village. So king's order had to be obeyed. So the next morning, one chap got up very early and said, everybody is going to pour milk. So why don't I put a lota of water instead? Who's going to notice the difference? Right? So he brought in a lota of water and poured it into the tank. In the evening, when the minister had the tank opened, it had only water because everybody had thought the same. They thought they could bypass the requirement because others would obey, right? And do we see how much our day-to-day living is in the same way? In common English, that's called one-upmanship. Can I be one up above the others? So what it only says is how every individual lives is going to be the society. So we can't ever say, this is the expectation of society. How can we not conform to it? When we say, I am society, how I am living makes for the society. I might be a minority. I might be one drop in the ocean, but I still add my worth to that society. So conforming to the expectations of society, is that not the trunk that supports this entire structure? If you do not conform to society, then it's a very, very painful process. You become an outcast, right? So society demands that conformity, and we have to learn how to live within that society and yet not conform. That's the greatest challenge that faces every human being. And the essence of that society, demand for conformity, rests upon just two pillars. Two. One is delegation, and the other is postponing and procrastinating. And this is what the hub of the nub of the talk today. And that's what I would really like to talk about. I am suggesting that these two, postponing and delegation, is the core of all disorder. Yes, of course, the core of the disorder is the ego itself, that we understand. But the ego is hidden from us. We can't see it. It first manifests itself in these two, delegation and postponing. So the roots of a tree have a very vital role to play. They support the tree, they provide the nutrients, but the roots can't be seen. They're only inferred. Only when the root is damaged do we understand that its functioning is essential to the tree. And in the city, you see it very easily. When they do this underground tunneling, sometimes they damage the root. And for no reason, the tree starts wilting and dying. Or the root hits a rock, stops growing. Then you understand that that root has not been able to grow, and therefore there's no sustenance for the tree. So if you look at any of these layouts, as they call them in all our cities, they get a piece of land which was once farmland, then develop it into plots, lay the roads, plant trees, because everybody says we must plant trees. So they plant the trees, and the tree grows for 10 or 15 years. Then construction starts in that layout. And after some time, the roads get paved. And then any piece of ground you start paving with concrete. So those trees don't have access to water anymore, the roots of those trees. And they stop growing. They can't grow any further. Once they fall, you can't replace that tree. And this is what we are seeing in Bangalore. It was once called a garden city. And we are fighting to preserve the trees which were planted 70 years ago when there was no concrete, there was no asphalted road. So they will live while they will live, but once they fall, they are gone. You can't replace them, except maybe with a concrete tree. So are not the roots of human beings similar? Their existence is inferred because we know that there has to be something which acts as the storehouse of this memory, the motive, provides all that, which is making us act, but we can't see it directly. Now that ego also arises from the same common source of energy, and energy cannot be seen. Energy cannot be perceived. Only the action of that energy in providing light, in providing heat, that we can sense. So we are dependent on our sense organs. Only what our sense organs can recognize, we say recognizes. We recognize. So our sense organs cannot detect magnetism. They cannot detect gravitation. They cannot detect nuclear energy. So we only assume they exist because of all the academic study that we. But if you just stand like that outside, you don't know that there is ultraviolet radiation in the sun. That's part of energy. So there are, but in this simile, there are some significant differences between trees and humans too. And it's worth considering those differences. One, the plant itself competes for water and nutrients, just as the human being competes for resources. But plants do not isolate themselves in this competition. They are able to coexist with other plants. So you have 100 plants growing from a small patch of land, and whatever comes to that land goes to, whatever water comes to that land goes to all the plants. There's nobody grabbing for more. It's not possible. But we human beings, we put in our compound walls, we draw boundaries, we put our armies, we grab. So that is a very, very significant difference. So what is the source of this grabbing? It's the ego. It's insecurity, is it not? Human beings tend to move away from coexistence to individuality. And if you notice, our entire preparation for being a career is to become more and more and more individualistic. So, must increase disorder.
हाँ उसमें वो नहीं है ये.
So, what is a human being to do? Is there anything the human being can do? Because a human being can consciously only act from the act of the will, of the ego, which itself is the problem. See, so what is it the human being can do? Can a human being bring change into his daily living? And therefore, we can't address the root, the ego, because it's out of sight. So we can only address the next level, which is the trunk. And the trunk can be addressed by just looking at these two. No delegating, no postponing. Why do we delegate? Why do we postpone? Do we ask this question? Both delegation and postponing are acts of thought intellect. Naturally, there is no such thing as delegation and postponing, right? All planning, everything that we look at in our society comes from these two, intellect, and for that the intellect needs this act of delegation, it needs the act of postponing. Now, does this seem far-fetched? Let's just look at our human lifestyle and we see whether this is true or not. We are in the age of technological progress. The last 200 years, technology has made tremendous inroads. This entire technological progress rests on specialization. And this specialization is the essence of delegation. I focus only on this area, so somebody else has to do the other area. This is more important. So unimportant area can be done by somebody else. And therefore it brings in this whole idea of superiority, a hierarchy of human beings, entirely invented by thought intellect and sustained by this delegation. And you see the consequences of this specialization. Our entire lifestyle, whether it is transportation, whether it is commerce, whether it is high-rise buildings, paved and concrete roads, electricity lines, wireless and mobile towers, motor vehicle pollution, invention of plastic, every one of these has come from this specialization through the delegation, and every one of them has created danger for our continued existence on this globe. So delegation has its other side, which is I am separate from everybody else and I am superior to others. And therefore, I want to climb that ladder. If I am here, I would like to become something more important. So both these, delegation and postponement, are as old as human beings. They are not a result of today's lifestyle. And you can see this in common day-to-day living. And it varies to some extent from culture to culture. So if you look at our Indian culture, cleaning up after a task is done is not part of our culture. That is to be delegated, right? Have you ever seen a craftsman, a tailor, a mason, barber, clean up after he does his work? No, that has to be done by the helper. Have you ever noticed that a bus driver or a lorry driver will never clean his vehicle? That is the cleaner's job. So there is a person called a cleaner, right? This is deeply ingrained. It's very, very difficult even to break this. Now, we are very, very enamored with Western culture, but we don't pick up this trait from the West, that they will not hesitate to do the clearing up after a task is done. That part we conveniently omit. And in fact, it's even more. If you watch people from India who go to the West, now when you go to the West, there is no maid servant, you have to do everything yourself. So they live there for 15 years, 20 years, right? Children are born there in that culture, learning to do all this by themselves. But if they return to India, something in the air here says, now I need to have a maid servant. I don't do this anymore. Now I delegate. It must be something in the air. So I'm suggesting this illness of delegation begins at home, and it begins very, very early in life. In how many homes do you have a culture that after a meal, everybody will wash their plates and then help in the clearing up of the table? Everybody, in many places, they just leave that and go. Either a maid has to do it, or a few years ago, if there was a daughter in the house, she had to do it. Right? The sons never did it. There are people who have never washed their plate in their lives. So, what about other household chores? You live in a house, it needs to be maintained, it needs to be cleaned. Whose responsibility is it? The mother or the sister. Or now they are also busy, well, maid servant. So that illness begins very early in life, and it begins in the home. So, and this illness is not identified with any particular socio-economic culture. It is across socio-economic culture, across all cultures in this land. This delegation, this thing that I don't clean, from every level of society, you will be able to see this, right? Now, when you study Gandhiji and some of the things that he did, right, in the seva of those days, one of the things that Gandhiji talked a lot about was cleaning toilets. Now, when we must understand that when Gandhiji said cleaning toilets, those toilets were not the kind of toilets we are used to today. These were toilets where human excrement had to be collected in buckets and taken out. It's unthinkable for us today. We can't think about it. But a whole generation of human beings did only that. And with the job went their dignity. Because we have delegated, we considered that job to be the worst job possible and delegated to those who had to do it. Right? So, even in our schools today, we are no more able to say, this is our home, and the cleanliness of the school will be maintained by the students and the teachers. If you try to do it today, you will have an uproar from parents. We are paying you fees and our children are supposed to act as cleaners? No, wait. So I pay this fee, I expect this in return. So we become service providers. Right? So fundamentally, postponing, putting off, and procrastination assumes that you will be alive later. Otherwise, how can you postpone? So the basic assumption, which is not talked about, is death is very far away. And therefore, let us postpone. Kal karenge. Right? So what does it mean when Krishnamurti talks of living with death, inviting death into your life, into your living? And there's a very interesting passage, which is one of his old talks. And let me just read that. If you had only 1 hour to live, what would you do? Would you not arrange what is necessary outwardly, your affairs, your will, and so on? Would you not call your family and friends together and ask their forgiveness for the harm that you might have done to them, and forgive them for whatever harm they might have done to you? Would you not die completely to the things of the mind, to desires, and to the world? And if it can be done for an hour, then it can also be done for the days and the years that may remain. That is an extraordinary message to listen to, right? Because living with death implies no postponing and no delegation. Krishnamurti also pointed out at one point, if you want society to be something different, you have to start. You have to bring order to your house. The house is you, right? And I am suggesting bringing order to that house begins with no delegation, no postponing. You cannot delegate because you are the world. To whom will you delegate? And you cannot postpone because there is no tomorrow except in the imagination. So thought can be used to watch and be aware of this compulsion on the part of every one of us to delegate and postpone. And I think that is the key. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody can comment or ask question. Harshad Parekh, sir, would you please unmute and say? Harshad Parekh, sir.
Hello. Thank you, Gopalanji. You have said so many things, and you have given an analogy between trees and human beings. I'd like to go to the topic of disorder. The disorder probably doesn't exist in trees because they don't have what we call intellect. But in human beings, the brain is more developed and we have got a thinking, and from thinking comes the sense of self or me. This kind of thinking doesn't exist in trees. They have instinct, but we also have instinct and intellect. And that intellect is the cause for disorder in our life. But also human beings have the possibility to go beyond the intellect, what Krishnaji would call intelligence. And our main problem of human beings is that we have developed intellect, which has helped us in many ways in making our life easier. We have machines and we don't have to go to hunt for our food. So life has made, intellect has made life comfortable, but at the same time, the intellect has created lots of conflicts in human relationship, because from this intellect or thinking comes this sense of I or me. And then once that ego, the self comes, then there is a division between me and you, and division of religion and nationalities, and all these problems arise because of the intellect. So if it may be possible to be free from this disorder only when we can give a very good attention to our inner world where thoughts and feelings are coming into existence. And that requires meditation and a curiosity to know about our inner world. And some human beings have been able to come to that a different higher dimension called intelligence. And once that intelligence comes, then intellect can function properly without creating any problems. So our main problem is a lack of awareness or intelligence which can see everything as it is, and that intelligence brings a kind of order in our life. It brings happiness, love, beauty. All this is possible for few human beings who are very, very deeply interested in looking at the inner world. But then some people will say that how we can look at the inner world when our mind is in disorder. Is it possible to be in the state of meditation when there is a disorder going on in our life? Then I would say no, but this disorder, in spite of disorder, if we can give certain time to sit quietly and look at outside, or we can write down about our disorder, we come in direct touch with our own mind, and then there is a slowing down, and gradually we can come to looking everything very, very clearly, our thoughts, feelings, conflicts arising, anger, loneliness, boredom. So Krishnamurti was interested in that we can be really free from the disorder which we create by our own self. And I would agree about the cleanliness. I myself is very much interested in cleanliness. Wherever I go, that is what I see, that in our society, we have not given more importance to cleanliness on our roads. We have given a lot of importance to cleanliness of our house. We clean every day, but we throw it on the street. And even I am right now in Rajghat, Varanasi, and on the campus, there is a main road which is used by many, many people, the villagers. And I see that on both sides of the road, there is a lot of garbage and it has not been cleaned for many days. So immediately I talked with the director and the Vasanta College principal that why it is like that in a Krishnamurti school, why we are not interested in looking at on the road outside. Probably then what the answer I get is that everybody is very, very busy with studying many, many subjects, and everything is so well regulated life that, and the mind is occupied with what they have to do. And so the eyes, the mind doesn't see what is there on the road. And so that is the a danger of this kind of education, which prepares us only to study the subjects which are about the outside world. But even then, um, we are not looking at the outside world clearly. We don't know how to look at the tree, the beauty of the tree or the flower or the river, when we are so much occupied with what is going on within us, what we have to do next. And so this, I see that even in Krishnamurti schools, teachers and students, they are not so much interested in learning about what Krishnamurti has said, because if uh, some people are interested in going very deep into Krishnamurti and then from Krishnamurti's words going into their own mind, then there is some kind of clarity comes, which can help uh, not looking only at the thoughts and feelings clearly, but it can look at the trees and the roads and everything very, very clearly. And if we see somewhere something garbage, we do something about it, or if the water is leaking from the underground pipe, we immediately see, or if we see the river is polluted, we can do something about it, write to the Prime Minister's office, and so on. So I feel that it is really bad that this education, which is developing the intellect, but it has not helped us to go deeper into our own inner world and come to a state of clarity, intelligence, love, beauty. All this is missing. And that is why we see a lot of disorder in society, a lot of corruption and violence at every level, whether it is in the family or in the city or at the international level. The countries are fighting a lot of conflicts. So human beings can become worse than trees, but human beings also has a possibility to become Buddha or Kabir or Krishnamurti. It only depends whether we are really deeply interested in looking inward and see everything clearly. Okay, I have said enough. Thank you very much.
V Rao, you have written so many things on the notebook. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah. Please.
Please.
Namaste to all. I have heard the subject very nicely. Shared the good knowledge today. What Gopalan sir told, explained very well. The society is just like a tree. The first time I compared the society with the tree. Jiddu Krishnamurti always says, you look at the tree and its nature and its beauty and its naturality, then you are also able to observe your naturality in and outside. Gopal sir explained very well how the trees and the environment is being damaged by the culture, environment, and the society like that. And moreover, the point who Harshad Parekh sir told, how to avoid the disorder in the minds. So many people, including the JK participants and friends and families also, we have also the disorders still in our minds, but we are acting no disorder. But we are interesting to learn the teachings many more. Some commented like this mind has become garbage. Teaching like that only. So mind never becomes a garbage. With your knowledge or without your knowledge, many comments, many unnecessary knowledge used to come in your mind in so many ways in our society. But this kind of satsang, whoever the experienced people who say, it will give the right potentiality and the right, which is equal to the years together. If you spare for the half an hour, that may be equal to the 5 years of knowledge. But curiosity is necessary. But out of curiosity, you learn the new knowledge. And afterwards, how the quiet knowledge and the rational knowledge will be sustained and remain in the brain and mind, and how to implement it. When you do the action only, it will be remain in your brain. Otherwise, it goes away automatically. Within 24 hours or 72 hours, it goes away. That's why, so I myself is applied the writing therapy, which Harshad Parekh sir told. Whenever you have so many thoughts are there, when you write down what are the necessary, what unnecessary, what are sense, you yourself can observe. You need not bother to show the same notes or diary to the others, even with your wife or your children like that. You are searching your inside yourself. Then you can put into order in a slow manner, after week, after work, after month or month by month, you can put in order. That is, even a layman and common man and the education person also can rectify themselves by the writing therapy. Writing therapy is mostly useful. Okay. After 1 week, you can realize very, very well. I realized and implemented in action. I changed myself in many aspects also. Through the excellent speaks and talks from the JK Vijayawada group also, I learned so much. And Jnanajyoti from Visakhapatnam, sometimes I used to attend. Mr. Prasad Agar also here, he used to give the excellent lectures in Telugu in JK Vijayawada meeting. So if the meeting goes on for the 1 hour or 2 hours, we can observe the thing which is the scientific manner and the psychological manner. You can write it down immediately. Not seeing, not listening. Write it down immediately. That writing the important points will be in headline. That will boost your mind, and that your mind inspiration and brings the awareness. Most of all the two speakers told about the senses and senses knowledge. Utilizing our senses in a particular way with keen observation and 100% observation is mostly helpful and useful for oneself, one family, and to the society also. That is JK told. Thank you, sir. My observation. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Pradeep, thank you.
Yes. Am I audible, sir?
Okay, okay. You are
Okay, Gopalan sir, very good morning. Another very interesting talk. But the thing is, after listening to all that and reading a number of things, old stories right from Bhagavad Gita to this Urdhva and all those things, what is in me right now and around me right now, what has spread like more than a virus? Why? In spite of having so many seers and saints and everything, if we go on simply blaming intellect, or rather pinpointing intellect as the main culprit in human mind and all that, as if we can see intellect with the red color and intelligence in between, sometime with blue, and ignorance as something like that. We talk like that. You see, this is what I have been listening to. You know, JK had a long discussion on this topic in Ohio in 1980s with John Hitley, a psychiatrist, Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist, David Bohm, a nuclear physicist, as main participants. Krishnamurti was firm on his seeing individuality and associated self chiefly responsible for creating and maintaining disorder in man and the society by and large. Sheldrake discussed at length the presence of this center in one form or other in whole of life, including animals and plants in nature as such. A long history of suffering in nature and disorder in nature and modifications through learning in time and space. So whenever we talk as if we are talking in some way other than what is in nature, as if we are trying to modify nature. We can see better than nature. Being nature, we can see better than that, and what is what and all that. So if each one of us join this discussion honestly, we can see how difficult it is to see ourselves living our individuality, relationship, comfort zone, position, etc., to touch that dimension on as what JK was talking about. So it is so very easy to understand the dynamic of myself and its universality than listening to someone else's narrative. How much negation actually happened? At what age we understood, and the contribution of the period we lived and experienced in different roles. So this way, if we see what is, even now I am talking in seeing what is, with David Bohm, there was a lengthy discussion on cosmic order and order in human mind. So Bohm was very clear in saying that order is a perception. We can't get hold of order. And he also asked JK, but why does the brain stay in that condition as we all are in? Krishnamurti said it feels safe. So we have to be, we all want to be safe, don't we? It is afraid. I'm afraid of something new taking place. It is afraid of taking something new, that brain cell which we were talking about earlier, about mutating those cells, and immediately in timelessness, this can happen instantly. So then another thing was constant repetition makes the mind mechanical and dull. JK said it, right? That is part of the disorder. Bohm said that is part of the disorder. Do we see this happening through us? Life has an extraordinary meaning in it. That is what JK said, full of compassion, etc. And every act in the physical world can be corrected immediately, as per what JK said. But can it be communicated immediately? There was a question, can it be communicated to others? So, while listening to your interesting talk, so many things came, all related things, and whether greed, which is everybody wants more of everything, this or that, even so-called religious scriptures, this and that, everything. Natural greed as the source, is the root of disorder. And what is this happening in bourgeois society? What is happening? Where the money is, that can buy all that which we are marketing throughout, including the so-called very important technological gadgets. Who has the money? So, and naturally a very exploitative mind has the money. This is what I see very clearly every day, how we go on nourishing corruption in one way or the other, either through, this is part of the thing, you have to do it and all that. So we have to answer these questions, whether the root is these things, very natural, that's why it has spread so much. It has spread because it is part of the, it sounds very bad to say that it's part of the human or say animal instinct in us, or we can go on using different words, but the present, what do we see? The violence which JK talked about it almost a century ago, or whatever it is. What has happened? Gandhiji lived a particular way. What has happened? What has happened to those organizations around the Gandhian organizations? So if you see the complexity of a man in some form and its relationship with the whole, the whole, what is called power sector, or where the power is, as you say. Otherwise, JK's education system would have long been taken up in our institutes, but they will not do it. They will never do it. And money is required for everything, including JK's way of delivering those things to young students, because a beautiful ambience, a beautiful scenario all around, and a fresh air and a very nutritive, good food, all those things are there, and everything is money based. So these things sound very simple, but they are simply so complicated. And that's why what we are negating in a way is spreading beautifully with full vigor. Thank you very much. I have taken a lot of time. Thank you for giving me this time. Thank you so much. And I'm not pessimistic at all. I'm not pessimistic at all. The type of life I live, I know what JK said at my level, what it has contributed. I know everything. That not everything, that's a little egotistic statement. But the fear, what relationship it has with the thought and my past life or whatever it is, those things were beautiful and everybody. But the potential and the mass around, not that I'm saying, if I simply say this is a very rare thing, then I am putting myself in that rarity and simply happy about it. No, no, sir. It was for everyone. Like Buddha, JK also said, potentially everybody has that light. But what is happening is, what is being triggered, what are we, how we are regulating, how we are being regulated rather by a different, beautiful we are run by memes, not so much by genes. Every day we are supplied thousands of memes. So this is what I see around me. I am not thinking, otherwise it would be intellectual. But this is what I see. I don't know when intelligence comes through me, if at all, and whether intellect, how much of it, and all those things, how much knowledge, how much I am retaining, and all those things. So I may be branded as a very complicated man, but simply I'm living a very, very orderly, pretty orderly life. Thank you very much.
I think Anandji wants to make a comment.
Jensa, please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Jensa. Jensa, please unmute.
Gopalan sir, do you want to comment on Pradeep's statement? Gopalan sir.
There are others who have raised their hands, so let them first
Let them.
Yeah.
Yes.
get a chance. Yeah.
But ultimately you have to say.
Last lady.
Anand, please.
Good morning to you all, sir. As always, I mean, I seem to be getting caught in the functional and the psychological aspect of it. I am unable to differentiate between these two. And as I observe that, I always fall back on my conditioning, my background, my comparisons, my analysis, my rationalizing, my reasonings, and I want to achieve something, I want to reach somewhere. This seems to be my conditioning. This is what I have been taught from the time I was born, and this is what is going on. And I keep saying, I bring Krishnamurti and I say, this is how it should be done. I talk about what the society is without looking at my own self. I want to talk about the disorder, looking at my own disorder. The disorder is me. It's not out there. I talk about the cleanliness out there. I don't see the, what do you call the dirt outside there. I don't see the dirt inside here. We seem to be keep repeating day after day, the same thing. I talk about some other great person. So what if that person was a great person? Why are you talking about him? What am I is the question. I may understand him intellectually, but is that sufficient? If I ask my own wife, or you ask your wife, or your children, or your neighbors, or your kids, or your friends, they will have a list which is unending about you, about me. And then I say, I'm a perfect person. I'm a perfect gentleman. I know what to do. I understand life. I know what society should be. Well, the changes, what should take place over there. How do I understand that me and you are responsible for every violence which is taking place out there in the world? Your actions and my actions. Am I aware of that is a question. I want this society to be beautiful. I want this country to be beautiful. I want this world to be beautiful. There should be no killing. Every person says that, and he's a person who goes and commits a murder and suicide. Kills people. I may not be killing, but my actions, that violence which is in me, it adds to it. How do I understand all these things? And I say, we should not cause. They are causing damage. Who is causing damage? Why do I say them all the time? I know I said, the moment I say no, I'm back to my conditioning. The big I is there. How do I understand that I all the time? For even a split second, I can't put it aside. And I said, the world should change. They should change. The society should change. And K said, can you observe the tree? He did not say that it is a society. Then there's a comparison. There's a fragmentation. There's violence in that. In fact, the tree is it's a whole thing for things which live underneath and above it. It's a whole world for it. I'm not bringing. I don't want to compare myself to anything. The moment I compare myself to anything or anybody, again, there's a fragmentation, there's a division, it's a violence, there's conflict. Why do I keep repeating the same things again and again and again? And I say, I'm learning. Learning what? What have I learned in my life? At least can I remember one day when I'm not looked at my wife with, the anger in me, or my children, or my friends. I may control it. I've seen one of our participants here, somebody came behind, into his room. Then I could see the person who was speaking. There was anger on his face. He may not have noticed it, but I could notice it. He didn't want the lady to come inside his room. So again and again and again, sir, we keep seeing, at least can I see the mistakes I'm repeating? That is my point. Can I observe that I'm repeating the mistake again and again? That is very essential. Thank you, sir. That's about all.
Arun Partha.
Yeah, hello. Good morning, everyone. So actually, for any disorder, I've seen like in my own life itself, if I bring in some kind of discipline into my life, I've seen a lot of changes which is happening. That is like especially with the mental states as well as your body states and all. If you eat a very healthy diet, then you take good rest and all that, we can see a lot of changes which are happening in us, that the anxiety as such goes away you minimize it to a large extent and all that. So my question is, this discipline which I've brought into my life, right? For many years, does it, according to case study, case side, will it be considered as a kind of a habit or a conditioning? Because I'm following it every day as a rhythmic pattern. And even if I share it with the others and all, does it become like I'm conditioning others with my own thing? So that is my question. What is the thing? What is discipline as such? Is it like, does it fall under habit or conditioning? Thank you.
Rajendran.
When we say discipline, what we normally mean is the word control. But control is not discipline, right? Why should you eat healthy food? Because somebody says this is what you should eat. If you yourself understand what is healthy for you and not healthy for you, when you function from that understanding, do you need any control? So this is the whole point. Discipline comes from the word disciple, right? So you are learning by observation. You are deciding what is right for you. In one sense, you are seeing what is right for you. You are doing that. Do you need anybody to tell you anything?
Rajendran.
Thank you, Jain sir. Just today, Rajaram sir was talking about this postponement and delegation. When I observe in myself as to why I postpone and why I delegate, then it comes to my mind that the two forces which is controlling our life through millions of all our evolutionary stages, that is
pleasure and pain. So pleasure and pain results in fear. Fear of not getting the pleasure again, repetition, and a fear of getting the pain. Sometimes the actual pain is much more horrible than the anticipation of that pain, imaginary pain. So the fear is the cause of for this postponement and delegation. Because why I postpone things, I'm not sure about the success or result, or whether it will be successful, or whether it is a boring, or it may result in pain. I am not sure of the result. I'm anxiety. Because of some anxiety, I postpone. And I delegate some work. Many jobs I delegate. Suppose some calling bell is there, there is a calling bell, somebody is there at the door. Then I delegate my wife to go and open the door. Because I am watching some news in the TV. So the fear is a root cause of both that is the powerful force that is controlling all our life, whether pleasure or pain. Fear is a result of all such these two basic things, pleasure and pain, that results in fear. So they control all our lives, and they are the result of the two things our Rajaramji is talking about, that is postponement and delegation. Thank you, sir.
Ghouse, sir.
Good
Please
afternoon,
unmute.
Two words, procrastination and delegation, are making great sense, sir. When I look at these words, how these words are playing in my daily life, even at psychological level, I am procrastinating and delegating, sir. For example, I may be having a conversation with my friend, and in that conversation, I may behave selfishly. A feeling or ill feelings may have generated. I may feel jealousy because of that conversation. Immediately after the conversation, instead of going into why I'm feeling jealousy, why these feelings have generated in me, I just afterwards I will think about it, why I feel jealousy. I just procrastinate it. Evening I will think, and I never go back again into again I never go back. Why these feelings have generated in me? I procrastinate. Why? Because it may be somewhat hard for me to go to do that work. Instead of doing that psychological work, I'm procrastinating it. I will think about it afterwards. Like that, I may be tell. And even delegation, sir, I can see some of my friends who are devotees of some modern day gurus, how they will delegate instead of going into their insecurities, fears, pleasures, selfishness. They simply say these statements like, "My guru is everything. They can deal with everything. They are solution for everything. He is the answer for everything." Instead of going into it, understanding, working on it, they just delegate their work, their psychological work to the gurus. So I feel, sir, this delegation and procrastination is happening at a great level, even in psychological sphere also, sir. Uh, Thank you, sir, for bringing these two words, seemingly simple words, into the forefront. Procrastination and delegation. I think we need to inquire about these two words. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, my idea was not to just bring these two words. I'm really asking, can I address this in my living? And in the process of addressing it in my living, what will be the quality of the message that I send to those I live with, including my children, my grandchildren, right? That is my question. See, we are used to something that has come to us from the West now. That is this business which is built on credit. They call it overextending. See, if you were to build a business from the resources that you have, it would be very, 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 very small. So we borrow. At no time can that business ever be wound up and those borrowings repaid, right? So this is called going concern basis. So long as the wheel is spinning, everything is solvent. If you stop, you fall. So you can't afford to slow down. You can't afford to stop. And that is how we get trapped, because that makes you keep running and running and running. So there's only one way. And that is, to me, that example of that electric motor. You want to reduce the back EMF? Slow down. Why do we have to run so fast? Why do we have to do so many things? See, the beginning of this is actually filling the stomach. If you are starving, you have to do something to get food. So we'll go and do something. But it doesn't stop with that. Once I've got one meal, I'd like to say now, I don't want to have hunger tomorrow. So can I plan a little for tomorrow? And then this problem starts there. So we never allow ourselves to live from day to day. That's a concept talked about somewhere. We don't understand what it means to live day to day. So do we have faith that life will take care? We don't have that faith. We feel we have to be in charge. And so long as we have to be in charge, we must be in disorder and we must get slapped again and again in the face to point out that you cannot be in charge. World is bigger, life is bigger. But still we will get stuck. Are we learning from that?
Harshad Parekh, sir, please unmute. Harshad, sir.
Okay.
You are not able. No.
Okay. Are you able to hear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Somewhere I read in Krishnamurti book that if you want to go very far, you have to start from what is near. And near is our own mind. And the question is it possible to see our mind clearly? And as Gopalan sir said, that if we want to see our mind clearly, we have to slow down. And when there is a clarity in seeing, it will express itself in everything what we do. But without clarity, we can go on speaking and quoting many people. It will not lead anywhere. The only thing we have to do is to be silent initially. Maybe we need to be alone, silent, curious, looking inward. And if that is very difficult to do, then nothing can be done. So the starting point is our own mind. And without that, whatever we do will create more problems in society. There will be lots of conflict with people around if we are not able to see ourselves clearly. And I like to say about Pradeep ji seems to be saying that intellect is not harmful. I would say that intellect is very, very helpful, and all scientists are using intellect, lawyers are using intellect. Everybody, when you want to justify what you like to do, you will use intellect, and that comes from thinking. But intelligence is something different, and as long as a person has not really felt it, that silent observation, if it has not happened, then the intellect will say that there is no such thing as intelligence, that intelligence is the product of intellect, they will say. But that is because the intellect is very strong and it doesn't really know what intelligence means, but intelligence can use intellect in a proper way. And this is also what Krishnamurti has said. And I also myself feel that without this intelligence, we cannot see things clearly, what is happening within us, as well as what is happening outside. And because Krishnaji had that clarity, he could speak authentically and he could help also many people. And the people could also, like people like me, I did not really need dialogue with Krishnamurti, but his books were enough to make me look inward. And I found that, yes, what he says, I can see it in myself. And when you see it, you become authentic. Then you will have no need to repeat what Krishnamurti has said. You can speak from your own looking. And that is where the problem in our education, we have given so much importance to learning about the outside world, even can know what is happening within an atom, and then there is a nuclear energy in the nucleus, and human beings, through intellect, have been able to get that nuclear energy for our use, for electricity and other purposes. But that is intellect, which can look into the atom, what is happening. But when we become very curious to look at our own mind, how it is working moment by moment, to see it without thinking. And if we see it with thinking, then it is going round and round in the plane of thinking and feeling. So only when a silence comes in one's life, one really feels the beauty which is there around us, even in empty space. So this is the difficulty, that human beings are not able to look inward very, very clearly. And so by asking that question, do I see it? That question is very important. Then the mind will stop, and then we'll begin to really see it. But otherwise, one can ask, do I see it habitually, mechanically? Then one will keep on asking many, many questions throughout one's life. But when actual seeing happens, you don't ask, can I see it? You see it. Okay, I have finished. Thank you.
Rajaram Kudli, please
Yes,
unmute.
sir.
Please.
Yes, sir. So I thought of sharing something when Gopalan sir said that, this act of procrastination and delegation is to look at it in our lives. That made sense. Not take it as some Mahavakya and then, go with it. So that made absolute sense to me, because I am notoriously known for, procrastination. And my family accuses me of that because I don't pay bills at the right time. I have not paid taxes for a whole lot of years, not tax filing. I keep paying fine also. To me, both these acts have to be looked at, is it being done with a motive? What is the motive? It might look like, procrastination to somebody else who has a stake or who has an interest in the act I'm supposed to do in certain time. If I don't pay bill, the Bescom fellow will come and cut the electricity. So that's the pain my family will suffer. Similarly, if I don't pay insurance, it will elapse. If I don't pay taxes, taxman will put some fine. So these are the, I would say, the indications of the kind of disorder one can get into in our life. Whereas, if you are doing something with love or compassion, there is an act of compassion that is necessary to be done now. For me, when there is a situation which is demanding an act of compassion, nothing else matters. All other things, paying the bills, paying my insurance, paying taxes in, tax or filing tax returns in time is all about personal wealth or personal comfort. It doesn't matter. Our life is not going to stop if I don't pay bills immediately, or if I don't pay taxes now. It's going to be a matter of another 5% or 100 rupees, fine. And this, working with compassion is such a, space that there is always one situation after another situation that will demand that kind of an attention. Similarly, when it comes to delegation, now, when I am in continuously following up with acts of compassion, and that's what my being is, absolutely there is no measure of time, but bill has to be paid. Then I would ask one of these, people for whom I am working. I don't even have to ask. They actually volunteer. They go and pay my bills. What is the problem? So it's a cooperative, it's like coexistence. It is codependence. So when there is that sense of mutually helping each other in a relationship, when there is an act of compassion, you are part of act of compassion, like teaching poor children coming from rural areas. They have no clue what to learn, where to go, what to do. If I am engaged in that, I don't mind asking them, neither they mind going and paying my bills or buying even vegetables for my family. So it came to when he said, it is to look at it in our lives, what is a very natural mutual help might look to somebody else as delegation. Similarly, what might be actually postponing an act for maintaining of personal wealth or saving some money for the sake of an act of compassion that is required to be executed now may look to others as, procrastination. Thank you.
Time is just to finish. It has finished rather. So, Speaker sir, would you please conclude now?
So, as Rajaram said, it is to look at one's life, right? If there is sensitivity, if I am sensitive and watchful, I will handle the things that I need to handle. I might also slow down. I might not do too many things when I can see that I'm not able to handle it. I am not the supporter of the world, right? So what is it that I can do, keeping in mind my primary responsibility? My primary responsibility is to understand myself. If with that understanding, whatever I can do, I do. I am not here to feed everybody in the world. I can't do it. And I don't need to try. So we have to begin from ourselves. So I will go back to that deeper question that came in. What does it mean living with death? When I don't know if there is a tomorrow, and I am the world, whom will I delegate? So what does that mean? It's a question for investigation. I'm not giving you an answer. And this is not a theory. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Modak, do you remember what is the next lecture on
Sir,
Sunday?
I don't know. I do not have any idea about it.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Now you can end it. We will send it. End it.